I think you should do the intro this time.
What is the intro?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Oh,
It's the Wild West, baby.
I was like, is there a specific thing I should have memorized for this?
You didn't get the script?
No. Did you send it to me?
Oh, no, I didn't have a script this time.
Oh, okay. Welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else.
That was cool. I liked the enthusiasm.
Yeah, that was a good start, right?
I'm impressed.
Yay.
Charlie's joining us again in the background.
He's always here.
He's
He never
always here.
leaves.
He never leaves. He can't.
No.
He wouldn't survive in the wild. Not anymore.
Oh, no. He tries. He tried the other day.
He sure does. I should probably clarify, if anyone's just jumping on this episode, Charlie's a dog. He's not our child.
Yeah. He's our very old doggy.
We have some news, if you've been following us for a while. We actually already recorded this whole podcast once, and I didn't like it. Oh, I didn't say anything incriminating. It just
didn't flow well.
It didn't flow well. I felt like I don't want to burden people with a bad podcast.
Right.
That takes too long to get to the point and meanders. Sometimes it's good.
But not in a good way.
It has too many filler words.
Mm-hmm.
So we recorded it, and then I didn't release it. So we're kind of re-recording it again.
Sort of.
Which I'm actually glad about, because I feel like now I have a little bit more time. Mm-hmm. Been thinking about it a little bit more. But essentially, for those who know our story, we have spent the last 3 years living on a family compound in the woods.
It still sounds so bad when you say it.
It sounds bad when I say it. It also kind of sounds bad when I describe it. But
you basically had to be there. I mean,
yeah, and it's also bad when you're there.
no, it's not.
So we lived in this big 3-story farmhouse with our family, my sister's family, my mom, my grandparents were in the little guest house next door. We had aunt and uncle on one side, aunt and uncle on the other side. Lots of people.
Yeah, like, so we say compound, but like everybody had their own space.
So multi-generational living
Yeah.
in the countryside. And we, as of, I guess, January, it's been a while.
The end of
This is how long it takes us to
January.
get out
Yeah.
things. The beginning of this year, we moved off of the family land, out of the country, and into a house, which before we moved onto the family land, we were traveling around the United States in an RV, living remotely.
Yeah.
So it has been a while since we've just lived a normal life.
Right.
And like I said earlier, we are entering our neighbor era. So we have
Yes.
neighbors again for the first time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about, I guess, changes and transitions, but also what does it mean to be a good neighbor in 2025, and navigating that through the lens of trying to be a good human. Mm-hmm. Anyways, do you want to start?
How shall I start?
How do you want to start? Let's start by talking about reflecting on our time in the woods.
Right. I think that's a good place to
What
start.
kind of person we're whatever can be. This is kind of stuff we have to cut out. What kind of person were you when you arrived versus what kind of person were you when you left? How do you feel like that time living, I say off the grid, but living on a dirt road, how do you feel like that shaped you in a way that you wouldn't have been shaped living in a city?
That's a good question. Obviously, I feel like a very different person from whenever we arrived at the farm versus from when we left. I'm not sure how much of that had to actually do with living on the farm, though. I think a lot of it had to do with having another child and navigating that, because, that kind of upends everything, and in my body and in our family, and like in a good way, but like that's a lot. The farm itself was a godsend to me, honestly. I think it was a very healing place. Just the ability, especially like, I don't know, after all the stuff that we had to leave behind, it was a place that didn't have any baggage. It didn't have, at least for me, this is coming from me, like, I know it had different connotations for you because it's your grandparents' place, so you grew up going there a lot, but I only visited like twice before we moved there, maybe like 3 times.
I feel like it was 4 or 5.
It was like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so I kind of came there with like a fresher feeling for it. Like I had never, I don't know, I didn't form my formative years like it did you, I think. And so I was able to, I don't know, heal a lot, think a lot. There was lots of time to do lots of thinking and journaling, and I didn't walk in the woods as much as you did. I did walk in the woods, but not as much as you did. And I never do anyway. That's not my modus operandi.
It's not really, you're not really a nature girly.
I mean, I am to a certain point. Like, there comes a point where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go back to the porch now. We have some iced tea. I do enjoy a good walk, though, especially in the wintertime, like in the fresh snow. That's my favorite kind of walking. I can't believe it was, 3 years you said?
It would be 3 years
well,
in a couple weeks
like
that we've moved
a
here.
little shy of 3 years then.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel like that long.
It's crazy how time flies the older you get.
Yeah.
It's actually terrifying to think about.
I know. It feels like it was just not like the other day that we kind of came here and, here we are now, though. I like this place too. Change is hard for me. I've gotten better at accepting change as I've gotten older, just because you have to. Like, there's no other. What else are you gonna do? But also because I'm like trying to figure out how my brain works and anxiety and all that stuff. And I don't know, change is definitely difficult for me, but moving here to the farm was a really good change. And then I think moving away from the farm has been a good change too, surprisingly.
I agree. I think I was really we had to leave because we were always planning on leaving at some point, and our family was getting big. We had a whole nother kid, and it was a transition that we knew had to happen at some point. Still really hard to not be around the land. Yeah. I feel like for me, I started forming, like, you can feel it in your body. Even when I go back to visit, it's like my body feels the land. Like, I feel different when I'm in the trees and in the pastures in a way that's different if I'm in a beautiful place that's not my home.
Right. Like
when I go to visit a national park or state park, still a great experience, but it does feel different. And it does feel a little sad not being able to walk out my front door and be in the woods again. But you're right. Like, just because something was temporary doesn't mean it wasn't supposed to happen. Right. Just because something ends doesn't mean it wasn't good.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think, and it's weird. I actually went back to visit a few days ago, and I remember walking around. I remember when we were getting ready to move, how upset I was. But I remember walking through the woods and thinking, if I can think of the number one lesson I feel like I gleaned from my time in nature in that capacity, it was just learning how to embrace the impermanence of all things. Because when you're surrounded by nature all the time, you're always seeing all of the different seasons, and you're walking the same trail, different seasons, different years. And one year there's really great mushrooms right here on the trail, but the next year they're not there. They're in this other spot. And then sometimes this berry tree has lots of berries, but then the next spring, not so much. Sometimes you get really attached to a tree, and then that tree loses some limbs or falls all the way down because of an ice storm or a flood or something like that. And so the woods are always changing, and things are always different, and nothing stays the same. And I think that lesson that the woods taught me was actually the lesson that helped me let go of that period of our lives, I think, is just learning to embrace the fact that nothing lasts forever, even good things. But also bad things don't last forever, and you just have to accept it, I guess. Which is weird, because at the same time, the woods is also where... I'm already getting deep here. Oh, man. So the woods is also where I feel like I really began to let go of my certainty around the afterlife and all of the things I had been so certain of in the religious tradition that I was raised in. And something interesting happens whenever you let go of your certainty about heaven, is that you come to grips with the idea that possibly this is the only chance I get to be alive. And whenever you begin to think about things like that, or in that context, you really, really don't want to waste any time.
Yeah, everything, every moment is precious then.
Yes, absolutely. And so you kind of pair that with this, again, this understanding of the impermanence of all things. And you kind of start to feel a weight that you want to like live your life correctly, you know?
Right, yeah.
And that you don't want to hold on to things that make you bitter and angry.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I feel that a lot because of our kids. And like, it was really hard for me to see them leave the farm because that was such a place of goodness for them. And the way that they blossomed and like came into themselves there was really wonderful. Especially Milo, I feel like he also feels a really deep connection to the land. That boy would be out there every single day.
He's a nature boy.
He's a nature boy. And I don't know, that was difficult for me to kind of let go of that idea of them being able to have that as part of their lives. But I will say that transitioning into town, like being in town and here, like we picked such a good place for that transition to happen. It's been wonderful because of the neighborhood that we're in and the neighbors that we have. And
our family moved
into
the neighborhood too.
That's
so we
crazy.
Still have cousins
We still
nearby.
have the cousins nearby. We have friends nearby. It's been so great. That transition has hardly been difficult for them at all, really. Yeah. I have, they've talked a little bit about missing that, but mostly they've been enjoying this new season.
I will say it was really devastating when we first moved in. I told the kids, said, "Hey, let's go for a walk."
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this. And Milo just looked at me real confused. He was like, "Dad, there's no woods here."
There's no woods. Yeah.
I said, "Well, bud, we walk on the sidewalk."
Yeah.
And
he didn't get it. He didn't understand.
We've been raised in the woods. He didn't even know what a sidewalk was.
But now he loves going for walks on the
true.
sidewalk
It's
or
true.
riding his bike. Like,
And yeah, it is really cool to be able to walk outside and see 4 or 5 neighborhood kids just in our yard. Sometimes kids I've never seen before.
Right?
Like, where are your parents?
Like, who are you?
Yeah, it literally happened today. Some kid I've never seen before. I'm like, who are you?
Why are you in my garage?
Do your parents know you're here? What I kind of see it as is we had this season of our lives that was a little more kind of looking inwards. When you're out in the country, you don't see people as often.
Right.
It was a lot more of us coming closer together as a family, but also just spending a lot of time healing, a lot of time in introspection. I feel like it's a very introspective period of time.
Yeah, I
and
think
now we're surrounded by people. I feel like now we're entering an era of building relationships and being present in a community.
Yeah.
Because at the same time that we moved, I also got a new job where I'm now
Right.
like working in the town that we live in. I used to commute to the nearby town, and which wasn't a big deal, but it's kind of like, you know, there's a difference between working and living in a town and living in a town and working somewhere else.
Right.
And so just as far as like how the social fabric feels.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I feel like we're...
Not to mention the time that you get back from that too, because it's so close. Like,
Absolutely. I have a 5.5 minute commute on a
Yeah.
bike.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And you
can't
couldn't
beat that.
I mean, I could probably get a higher paying job if I drove an hour away, but I mean, that wouldn't be worth it. I mean, I guess if I was going to pay like 5 times as much, maybe.
but even then it'd be like,
yeah, you can't pay for time.
yeah.
So, I feel like we're kind of entering this season of where we had this time in the woods where we spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time reflecting, writing poetry, brooding amongst the pines. And now we are going to be throwing block parties, hopefully. And
Maybe.
We're watching other people's kids, and we're having water gun fights and going back to church, which that's a whole thing. And so it's interesting. And I feel like, especially when it comes to things I've been talking about with the Rehumanist, it's all about restoring the social fabric. And it's hard to do that when you're living in the country. And so I do feel like it's an opportunity for me to kind of practice what I preach, quote unquote, because I'm always talking about this kind of stuff.
Right.
And so now I have an opportunity to actually put it into practice about like building that village.
Yep.
Which we were kind of doing in a different way with multi-generational living, but now we're kind of going a different direction with it. So yeah, but it's definitely something I'm still learning how to navigate, especially because I like to refer to myself as a triple heretic.
What?
Have I ever told you this?
No.
Because, we live in a small town, Midwest, outside of Kansas City. But I am not an evangelical, like Bible-believing Christian.
Right.
I'm not politically conservative. And I'm not a Chiefs fan.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Right. So,
I get you now.
But everybody, literally everyone who I know and love or I'm surrounded by on a daily basis is at least two of those three things. And so for me, I can either just pretend, totally change my personality. We could move somewhere where we I fit in better with people who think more like me, or I can put in the work of trying to build relationships with people who think very differently than I do about some of the big questions of life. And of course, let's acknowledge the fact that I am also a straight white man who used to be a pastor and grew up in a Republican household. So I'm able to do that a bit easier than somebody else might be able to. But that's also something that I have to think about is like, I'm kind of, I'm a triple heretic. So how do I navigate?
How dare you not be a Chiefs fan?
Right. And it's not that I'm a fan of another NFL team.
Right. It's just like,
I'm not even a sports fan.
Not a sports fan.
Right.
Yeah.
I know who Mahomes is.
Yeah. We know the lingo at least.
I know a touchdown when I see one, I think.
I don't know anything else about football though.
But yeah, that's where I'm at is how do I build relationships? Mm-hmm. How do I put in the work, even though I think pretty differently? And I will say that this is something I haven't figured out yet, but it's also hard for me because I feel like some people, and I heard that this was like, I don't know how true this is, so I'm on a podcast, just want to say this could be misinformation, but I've heard that this is a sign of either ADHD or autism, where most people are able to like have relationships with people that are just based around one hobby, like hobby friendships. So like this is the person I golf with. When we go there, we talk about golf. This is the person who I go to book club with, but that people who are maybe neurodivergent in a certain way aren't really able to do that. They're just their whole selves everywhere they go with every person.
Right.
Which feels exactly how I am. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a neurodivergent thing. Or if it's not, what you're acting like it absolutely is.
I don't know. I don't know anything. I mean, I don't know anything specifically.
We've been talking about getting me evaluated. I should probably just put that out there. Kind of all of us evaluated, actually. We might be one big spicy family. Man.
I'm like, if you do have a diagnosis, then it's highly possible that it could have trickled down. So we would definitely need to see it.
I really, and again, like this isn't automatically a sign.
No.
Of like
right. We would never like self-diagnose or say we do have something.
But I will say, I hear that people on the spectrum have a hard time with small talk.
Yeah.
And I get that because I want to just go deep with somebody on the very first conversation. Why waste time? Mm-hmm. I want you to know I don't have anything to hide. I'll tell you my whole life story.
See, for me, it's different. I hate small talk, but that's just because it's so stinking awkward.
Oh,
like,
right. Well, I agree, though.
The social anxiety that I get immediately when I have to have small talk with somebody. And then somebody would be like, wow, you're so good at talking to people. And I'm like, what? I am faking. I am faking so hard right now.
I just want to talk about my special interests.
Yes, you do.
I get really excited when other people do. But...
especially when it's Lord of the Rings.
So I bring all of that up to say that I haven't figured out how to navigate that yet, where I don't feel the need to close any parts of myself off, but I also know that I can't just talk about not being a Christian in front of all these Christian people. I can't go to a church and be like, let me share my anti-testimony.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to. And this is like a whole nother conversation, but I do think that it's unethical to trigger a faith crisis in somebody who, without their consent, if they're not wanting one,
right?
I think so. If somebody were to try to like ask me, why don't you believe in the Bible the way you used to? And if they were to try to argue with me, I would let them win. Probably.
Right.
Because depending on, I guess if they were a jerk.
You would have to like sense where they're trying, like the why of what
Right.
they're asking.
I guess what I'm trying to say is most of my life I grew up with a worldview that I saw as inherently beneficial and positive. And so it felt natural to, when I formed relationships with people, we have a cat in the background.
Why is he chirping?
A brown. He knows we're podcasting. Franklin.
It's always Franklin.
Well, he's just, I think it was 8.
Well, none of the other cats will play with him.
Oh, no.
He's still so young and he wants to play, and they're so old and they're like, no, please don't.
So I grew up most of my life with a worldview that I would describe as what felt, at least to me, as inherently positive and beneficial for people, and something that I wanted to and was encouraged to share with other people and be in community with. And so I don't know if that's really possible now, because now I don't necessarily want to share my worldview with other people,
Right.
depending on who they are. And I don't mean that as like in a condescending sense of people can't handle my truth. I just mean, I can't imagine that a certain person who like their faith and belief in Jesus and the resurrection and heaven is literally what sustains them and keeps them moving and going every day. And the fact that like they believe that they'll get to see their loved ones again. I just can't imagine it being productive for me to share where I'm coming from with all of that, and then us to be able to form like a good loving relationship. But maybe, I think mostly it probably terrifies people who really rely on that, because I kind of was the poster child of evangelical Christianity, and then now I'm not. And I think when people see that, they think, well, if it could happen to him, it could happen to me.
Right.
If it happens to me, I don't know if I could survive that.
Right.
Like, I don't think people think that out loud.
No, but they feel it. I know that they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very subconscious.
So anyways, we kind of have started going back to church. At least I have. You have a break.
I go sometimes.
And so we went to like this Connect group, and they asked us, why do you go to church? Or why did you pick, they asked us, why did you pick this church? What was that decision like? And I was honest with them. I said, the reason we started going to this church is because it's the closest church to my house.
Which they totally understood that.
Yeah, they laughed. They thought it was great.
Yeah.
But I said, I want to be where my neighbors are on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And a lot of our neighbors are there. And
There's a lot of them,
the teachers from school and the coaches.
And the kids that are with our kids all the time at school. And yeah.
And when I was younger, I used to really rag on, especially the dads who would only go to church for like the social capital, but didn't engage with the Holy Spirit. But now that I'm older and thinking about things differently, I'm realizing that if you want to influence your community, you have to be willing to work with the institutions that already exist and that are available to you. And I also understand, again, straight white man who is worship leader, it's a little bit easier for me to say that than somebody who's wouldn't feel safe in that church, because let's be honest, there are people who wouldn't.
Right.
And I get that. I have an inherent set of privilege, right?
Right.
But does it make sense for me to use that privilege to build bridges? I don't know. Yeah. So anyways,
Plus,
it's a weird space.
It's a pretty good church. Like, it's not.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll listen to this.
No.
Nobody's gonna listen.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I like it when I go.
Yeah. How are you feeling about getting back into all of that?
It definitely, and I know this is, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it used to. I don't think it ever will again, just because of where I'm at with my faith journey too. Although I'm in a totally different place than you are, I think. Not totally different, but like, I am in a different place. I know.
I mean, everyone's in a different spot.
Well, yes, but it's still weird for me sometimes to go to church because it feels so different. You know, like I sometimes do really miss how it used to feel. Like just the belonging and like being able to lead worship on a Sunday morning. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I dig down deep enough, like how much of it's that in me, like just really liking to perform for people, which was part of it. You missed the limelight. I liked singing in front of everybody. Okay, sue me.
I liked being the center of attention.
It was fun. But yeah, like also just having community and like, I don't know, for us, we were really like in the church and people, we were part of it, like deep in it. And I don't want it, that sounds so weird to like be like, people loved us. Like,
no, absolutely.
No,
I mean,
know what I'm saying?
For me, I do think about my time. I think about my time with like in religion. I think about it in the lens of I was seen and known and loved by the God of the universe. But I also see it as a time of like being deeply known and loved by people.
Right. It was very like you felt ingrained into that community. And that's been lost pretty much. And so it does feel really different when I go. It's hard for me to like engage in that again.
Yeah.
And it's not like anything wrong with that church, I don't think. Like,
yeah.
I would say they're doing everything fine, like right and fine. And they are trying to reach out to community. Like I do. I like them. I like it. It saddens me that I don't think I'll ever feel about church the way that I used to.
It saddens me that I can't just play the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say that. But
that's because we are seeing it from the outside,
yeah.
whereas before we were in it.
And I don't mean to imply that people who go to church who are very religious, who love the Lord and read the Bibles are playing a game.
No,
what I mean by that is that even though I was incredibly genuine for my whole life, I really feel like I was. Beneath that is your subconscious that is responding to various social cues and anxieties and fears and picking up on all these different things. Yeah. It's all happening without your knowledge or consent. And when I think about like with all of that, there was absolutely this feeling of all I have to do to gain favor is make sure I believe the right things. And then I know it was a social space that I knew how to navigate incredibly well because I was raised in it. Since the time I was 3 weeks old, I was at the same church. I knew exactly what things to say, how to respond to people, to be as loved as possible, which sounds awful. And it is awful.
But you didn't know it was awful. Like it didn't feel awful at the time or even feel wrong.
Isn't it curious how any conversation we have always ends up with us talking about religion?
Well, it's just a big thing we're dealing with still.
It's almost like our entire lives were built around it.
And it might take a really long time.
Sure.
Just as long to get out of our heads as it was that we were in it. So
it's just weird because I'm coming from a place of, for most of my life, I was spiritual but not religious in the sense that I had a desire to like walk with Jesus and be with the Lord, but not be under the yoke of religion and stuff like that. And now I'm kind of the opposite in that like, I'm pretty sure there's not even such a thing as spirit. Like I kind of go back and forth, but I'm down with materialism. Yet I feel, I see religion as like this a very important thing when I think about what it does psychologically. And I'm kind of entrenched. This is one of my special interests.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm kind of entrenched in a lot of these conversations about, like religion's place in modern society, because for a while the conversation, especially with like the new atheist movement, was all about like proving that God wasn't real, or like, is God real? Did the resurrection really happen? And that conversation has kind of shifted to now it's less about that and more a pragmatic conversation about, is religion useful enough to keep around? Is there a way to replace it? Should it be replaced?
Right.
Are we always going to need myths and stories to be able to drive society forward?
That kind of goes into like what is it called? Anthropology.
Huh? Yeah. And it's weird because now you're right. Like now I feel so different when I'm in a church service or in a small group or something like that. It used to be I would be like feeling the presence of the Holy Spirit, which I'm pretty sure was just my own subconscious. But
or even like a heaviness, like you know.
And now I look around and I watch people worship, and it's not that I think, man, these people are so weird, or I can't believe they believe this. But now it's almost like I look around and I think, this is people trying to make a meaning out of a meaningless universe. That's kind of, which is kind of, again, I feel like I feel like I can't actually have this conversation with the vast majority of people I know.
Right.
So instead of having it parasocially with everyone on the internet, it's great.
There's going to be lots of people who think the same as you do. So.
And or hearing people share their testimonies about how they were at their darkest point,
right?
And Jesus really pulled them through. Like I still think that that's true.
Yeah,
you know?
It's hard for me. You're right, because it's hard for me to sometimes navigate like, okay, and sometimes even the things that we experienced, like in our own life, like when we were doing mission work over in Peru, like some crazy stuff happened. And like, how
I wrote a whole newsletter about that.
Explain that, like, sometimes you can't. And so then you're like, okay, so then what does that mean? Like, anyway. Yeah, it is. It's crazy to I don't know. I can't even come up with words right now to figure out what I'm trying to say.
I think, and they say that everyone who leaves religion goes through an angry atheist phase. I don't know that I ever had an angry atheist phase. I don't know if I've ever really had an atheist phase. I feel like I've always been so curious enough that I'm always kind of agnostic, like,
there could be
down with
something,
this.
yeah.
But everyone kind of goes through that phase, and some people stay in it. Especially people who are deeply harmed.
Right.
I don't blame those people at all. But a lot of people who kind of work through that phase end up in this other phase where you realize what religion is doing for other people. You remember how you were whenever you had that framework. And I hope this doesn't come off as condescending again, but it's like you kind of have compassion on people who still cling to those things in order to get through the day.
Yeah.
Because it is like pretty crazy without them. I wouldn't describe my worldview now as hopeful. I describe it as honest, which is why I believe it. But here's what it is. Atheism is, and I wouldn't describe myself necessarily as an atheist, but I should say like non-belief or agnosticism is a belief of privilege. Because if you have lost somebody or multiple people who are close to you,
right,
and your certainty about getting to see them one day is what gets you through the day of being able to even handle that pain, then you don't have the privilege of being able to let go of that framework. I haven't experienced and maybe things wouldn't be different for me, but like I feel like I would maybe still be clinging on to religion if I had suffered to the point where I needed it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which again is why I don't go around trying to reverse proselytize people. I'm not.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. Yeah.
Which is also why religion correlates inversely with education and wealth. So the more wealthy and educated a country becomes, the less religion they need. Because the more people suffer, the more religious they are, almost across the board. With the exception being the United States, because of a bunch of Cold War stuff.
Wait a minute.
It's a long story. Just go read Jesus and John Wayne. It explains it all.
Okay.
For the most part, yes. The reason, which is, again, is why you're seeing this kind of drop globally in Christianity in certain places and a rise in other places, is that...
is it like the final grasp, the final throes of Christianity or something?
Well, again, it's just like
maybe in the U.S. it is.
So you're seeing Christianity grow in a lot of places like Nigeria or the global South
Yeah.
because of birth rates, which actually certain places in the South are actually, the birth rates are collapsing in the past couple of years too. But yeah.
Oh.
Now, did you know that Islam is going to be, there's going to be just as many Muslims as there are Christians, probably by the year 2050?
No, I did not know that. That's actually fascinating.
It may overtake Christianity. But guess what? It's not because of some spiritual battle. It's demographics. Muslims are having more babies.
That's true.
It's just what it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a very interesting fact. I did not know that. I don't read stuff like that, but I do like it whenever you tell me things.
Cool.
And then I can go look it up. I don't actually seek out that stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it finds me, but...
Anyways, so I'm kind of torn between this place of I have to build community with the people I'm around. And I don't say being like have to as in I have to.
I mean, obviously
it's a necessity, and I want to. And I want to build community with the people who are in close proximity with me. But at the same time, I acknowledge the fact that I think pretty differently than most
that
of
can
the
be
people I'm
difficult.
around.
Yeah.
And so where do you find that common ground? Right. And how similar do you actually have to be to somebody to be able to have a good relationship with them? I think we talked about this in our last episode, where so much of the modern world is about curating your existence and your relationships to be as convenient as possible. But the reality is that building community is not convenient, and it takes a lot of work, especially when you have different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think as much as we complain about being lonely in the modern world, I don't think we have the right to complain about being lonely if we haven't put in the work of trying to build that community.
Oh, for sure.
And push through those walls of different ideas.
What
and
do
again,
they say? In order to have friends, you have to be a friend.
it's a good one. Yeah.
So
a lot of people want the village, but they don't want to build the village.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be a villager.
They don't want to be they don't want to be a villager in the village.
So anyways, I feel like we're we're beginning a grand experiment. And I don't use experiment as in our neighbors are test subjects.
No, not at all.
But just saying, especially now that we're kind of in our 30s, we're a little more boring. We're ready to just care about things like the yard.
I've always been pretty boring. I mean, I still don't really care about my yard, though. I'm like, oh, the little garden. I should put more stuff in the garden. Oh, look at the birds. I'm like, oh, wow, it really does happen. Like, you become a bird watcher in your late 30s, apparently.
And I feel like I've always, just because, again, just my personality, I've always cared a lot about big picture stuff and what's going on in the world and things. You know, all the stuff that I have no ability to influence. And I feel, especially after the most recent election season and with this new administration, I feel the burden of being intentional about the people I'm very close to, like proximity wise. Right. I feel the desire to get hyper local, if you know what I mean, because that's where change starts.
Yeah.
And as much as
they say ripples, right?
Right. And I think as much as it's important to have an understanding and to care deeply about what's happening out there and these kind of big, broader social things that are moving and happening and within the culture and politics, I think it's more practical and even more important to understand what's happening on your block. I think that the American mindset is one where, especially for men, we have these like grand fantasies of civilization collapses and then we have to save the day. Yeah. Right. We set up a homestead, we grow food, we protect our family with guns. And if you're willing to do that when society collapses, but you're not willing to go sit in a boring city council meeting now, then I think that you don't actually care about your friends and family. You care about looking like a badass.
Yeah.
What have you been up to this week? Any suggestions? Any pebbles from the internet?
I mean, you already know this. You probably laugh at me all the time. But I've just been watching walkthroughs of Disneyland and Disney World most of the week. It's like, it's so nice. Like, it's just therapeutic. It's kind of like I put it on in the background and I watch it, or like it's playing, you know, and the kids will watch it sometimes too. And it's
Would you describe it as corporate ASMR, essentially?
Corporate?
Yes, Disney's like one of the biggest companies.
I know, but it's not corporate because it's like you're in the parks. Okay. Like, it's supposed to be you walking through the park. You get to see some of the rides, like a ride through, and you know, you get to see the atmosphere and you hear the people and you hear the music and you hear, like, I don't know, you feel like you're in the park.
Or just literally any city that's not in America where you can walk and hear music.
Right.
And
it's just very pleasant. I don't know. It makes me feel nice. Like,
yeah. Because that's what cities are supposed to be like.
Yeah. Plus, I really like Disney.
Of course, it's the Disney effect.
I really want to go there someday with the kids. And so I plan Disney trips all the time. That's like one of my
Disney walkthroughs.
I don't know, it's like how I unwind sometimes, is just like planning Disney trips. Not just Disney trips. I plan other trips too, like to unwind, but like Disney's real fun to plan because there's a lot to plan for Disney that goes into it. So I know people are probably listening to this being like, oh my God, but
do you think people peg you as a Disney adult?
No, not right away.
No.
I think some people are pretty surprised by that whenever I do admit it finally. It's something that I have to trust you before I admit it because I'm afraid of how people will react. Same thing with do I even say this?
How much you love Harry Potter?
Well, I do like Harry Potter, but that's not as scary because lots of people like Harry Potter. No, but reading webtoons.
Oh, nice.
Online.
Yeah.
Love reading webtoons.
Cool.
Oh my gosh. Comics, so great.
Here's my philosophy about that. I think that it's incredibly hard to be a human being.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pain and suffering in the world. And if you like something and it doesn't hurt somebody else to like it,
yeah,
you do you. Why would I care?
Yeah, and
why would anyone care?
I noticed too, though, it might be like more of a coping thing for me whenever I start doing that kind of thing, like watching the walkthroughs and planning the trips and stuff, is the more upset I am about stuff going on in the world.
Oh.
I tend to do that as like a coping mechanism a lot. It helps like offload that.
Speaking of what's going on in the world, so I started listening to John Green's new book. I've been telling you about it.
Yeah.
Everything is
Sounds
Tuberculosis.
really interesting, actually. I might listen to it too.
I feel bad to admit this. Hope John Green doesn't hear this.
Oh no.
But
what if he does?
I didn't really want to read the book because it sounded kind of boring to me.
Yeah.
Just like the idea of...
Listen, it's not your special interest.
Right.
Well, it's his special interest.
It's also tuberculosis. It's like, I already know what that is. I already know that it's bad.
Yeah.
How do you write a whole book about it? But I was curious enough about it. And I know John Green's like an amazing author. And it's fantastic. I'm only about halfway through. But just the way he uses the history of the disease and talks about how it's not just a disease, but it's a disease of injustice.
You know that he's a good author when he can make people interested in tuberculosis.
Not just interested, but like
riveted about it.
Yeah.
And
but the way he uses the history of the disease to also talk about just human nature and how that disease and disease in general and humans' relationship to diseases influence the way we think about each other and think about life and mortality and death and poverty.
How it fits into
and
the
race.
fabric of society.
Yeah. And one of the crazy lines he talks about is about how since like the 1950s, when I guess the antibiotics to completely eradicate tuberculosis were created, about 150 million people have died of tuberculosis. But it's completely preventable, which means that it is possible for us to live in a world without tuberculosis.
Yeah.
Which means that we choose not to. We've chosen to not live in a world without tuberculosis.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Why did we make that choice?
I mean,
and so that's kind
I
of,
didn't make that choice.
Right. But like that's
did.
kind of the central question of the book is that
Yeah.
if it's possible to live in a world without tuberculosis, why did we choose to live in a world with tuberculosis? And I think that's a really interesting question. I don't have the answer yet because I'm only partway through the book. But,
Wow. Well, good.
And he narrates the audiobook, which is great because I feel like he's got a great voice.
He has such a great way of speaking.
And yeah.
So maybe it is good if John Green listens to this. We love you, John Green.
Right. He would probably be really awkward about
he probably
how
wouldn't like
he would
that.
probably, you've been talking about this for too long. He'd say,
Yes.
stop talking
He's
about
like,
me
"Please, no,
and
enough."
start talking about how awful tuberculosis is.
Yes. That is actually
here's the
probably
thing.
exactly what he would say.
I'm gonna make a video about this. If you're hearing this after the video's already posted, then you already know what video I'm talking about. But I think that John Green has created an incredible format for enacting change. Because if you think about it this way, this is like the phrase that I think I'm gonna like use in the video.
John Green alone or with him and his brother Hank?
John Green, specifically with this book,
Okay.
because empathy is infinite, right? We can care enough. We can care 100% about everything that's going on, but action is finite. Like your time, your money, the amount of discourse you're able to engage in, and the conversations you can have, the relationships you can form around a specific injustice, that's all finite. And so if you try to care about every injustice equally, you're going to dilute yourself, dilute your ability to actually make a difference as an individual. But if you pick one injustice to just absolutely hate with every fiber of your being, then you can like actually devote the time and energy and resources to helping make a difference with that thing.
Yeah.
And
Like Bill Gates with malaria, right?
right. Yeah. Same thing. So it's like John Green has decided that he hates tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And that's like his whole career now. I mean, he wrote The Fault in Our Stars, Turtles All the Way Down. Like he could, if he wanted to, he could spend the rest of his career just writing these young adult books that do moderately to very well, have more movies made about them, make more money, go on tours.
Yeah.
And he could do that. But instead, he's writing a book about how much he hates tuberculosis, basically. And that's all he talks about now. Literally all he talks about. But I think that because of that, it's so much more effective than just spitting kind of various vague platitudes about all of the random injustices that are happening, which isn't to say that he's probably ignorant about the other things that are happening.
Right.
I'm sure he's well aware and does care and probably does help with action with other various injustices. But I think having like this one thing that's like, this is going to be my project.
Yeah.
Anyways, all that to say, I'm trying to figure out what I want to hate as much as John Green hates tuberculosis. He would say, just hate tuberculosis
Yes,
too.
he wants you to be on the tuberculosis.
You know what? He might
bandwagon.
have converted me. Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Anyways.
Man, I can't even imagine. Well, because obviously, like, I care about and have empathy about things, but like, that's really hard for me to imagine. Like hating something so much. I just have a hard time connecting to my feelings in general. And so I'm just going to go plan a Disney trip. That's what I'm going to do.
You're also in the thick of it. Okay.
I am. Yeah.
Nobody expects you to change the world when you got a baby.
No,
okay?
That's not true though, because there are so many amazing women who have kids and then still do crazy, amazing things.
Sure.
So, and I'm not like trying to be like, oh, poor me.
How many of them have like really good, family structures that they came from with parents who are retired and can help with the kids, and who don't have a whole bunch of baggage and things they're working through, and who didn't move across the country.
Yeah.
You can't compare yourself to other people.
I know. I try not to. Oh, there's the AC.
There's the air conditioning. That's our cue.
And on this episode.
Anything else you got going?
Nope, that's it.
Anyways, we're starting our neighbor arc, so stay tuned.